In this video, I will be discussing the time period of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald and how the characters of the novel are related to the ideologies and cultural formed by this time. The setting of the novel took place during the 1920s, also known as the Roaring Twenties, Jazz Age, Age of Intolerance, etc., and is known by Fitzgerald as the gaudiest spree in history. The 20s was a time of economic, cultural, and social prosperity for African Americans and the upper and middle class. This was due to an explosion in the industrial industry because of the development of new technologies such as the assembly line and electricity. These new advancements caused a need for new investments, resulting in the ascent of the famed stock market. Since only 1% of Americans own any stock, it allowed only the wealthy to benefit. The 1920s also benefited the urban and middle class. During this time, the wages for the urban working class increased by about 20%, and they also benefited from the falling costs of mass production goods. The most popular example would be the automobile. When the Model T was introduced in 1908, it cost almost $1,000, but over the years its price depreciated. By 1927, the price dropped to $300, and the rate of ownership changed from 1 per 15 households to 1 per 5. Although the urban and middle and upper class benefited, the lower class suffered from the decreased demand of products. During World War I, the demand for agriculture increased, causing an increase in production, but the ending of the war caused a surplus of goods with no buying market, leaving the farmers with nothing. The price of wheat fell by almost half, and the price of cotton fell by 3/4. So as the rich got richer, the poor got poorer. The 1920s also was a time of great prosperity for African Americans. The 20s was also known as the Harlem Renaissance, where blacks were given a chance to express their opinions on the hardships of their lives. They expressed themselves through music, art, and writing. This time included influential people such as Langston Hughes, Louis Armstrong, and Ella Fitzgerald. Along with black culture, there was also a rise in youth culture. The most popular example would be the flapper, who was a young woman who wore a short skirt and bobbed hair. They smoked and drank and said things that would not be considered quite ladylike. They also embraced their sexuality more than women in the past. However, women still inhabited their stereotypical role. They strived to marry a rich man so they would be well taken care of without having to work. It was a very materialistic time. Although new cultures flourished, not everyone was comfortable with it. In fact, it caused more of a conflict than a celebration for some. The 1920s was also known as the Prohibition era because of the banning of the consumption, selling, and production of alcohol. However, the Prohibition had a reverse effect. People began to illegally sell and consume alcohol in underground clubs known as speakeasies and through drugstores. This process was known as bootlegging. This also caused a rise in criminal activity and gangsters such as Al Capone. Now we'll look and see how the characters that Fitzgerald created relate to the time period, starting with the narrator Nick. Nick Carraway directly benefits from the ascension of the stock market. The novel says that he moves to the east to learn about the bonds business, also known as the stock market. He is also part of the upper class. Although he's trying to live without his parents' help, he still lives in the quite wealthy West Egg off an allowance for the summer. Next we have Jordan, who represents the stereotypical flapper. She smokes and drinks and is quite promiscuous. She moves from boy to boy without settling down and is also part of the ever-growing wealthier upper class. Tom and Daisy Buchanan both represent the materialist scene during the time. Nick describes both of them as careless people and says that they smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money of their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. This is shown when Daisy cannot decide whether or not she wants to leave with Gatsby and allows him to take the fall for the murder of Myrtle Wilson. Tom exudes cockiness and carelessness because he has money, and with money comes power. Fitzgerald shows us this when he introduces us to his mistress Myrtle, who lives in the Valley of Ashes with the rest of the poor. Myrtle wants nothing more than to be a part of the lavish and flashy upper class, so when she sees Tom, she begs him to buy her everything. But in reality, she's stuck in the lower class that got left behind after the Industrial Revolution. Because Tom knows that his money holds power over Myrtle, he treats her badly and even breaks her nose. Tom also shows his disliking for the rising black culture at the beginning of the novel at dinner when he says, "It's up to us, who are the dominant race, to watch out or these other races will have control of things." Fitzgerald's characterization of Tom shows the reader the stereotypical man during the 20s who came from wealth, cocky, masculine, arrogant, and controlling. Jay Gatsby is the only character in the novel who does not fit into one of the molds fashioned by the 1920s. Yes, he is rich and even questioned to be a bootlegger because of his association with Mayor Wolfsheim. He even throws extravagant parties every weekend, but his only goal was to rekindle his relationship with Daisy Buchanan. He was one of the few rich people who cared more about his relationships than the facade of happiness and wealth that everyone had. Fitzgerald uses the following characters to show the materialism in the time period, but uses Gatsby to provide an aspect of hope. Hope for people to find something better besides money, but love and happiness.